My name is Dilanian.
And my name is Alec Sepetjian.
And we are both third-year law students at Southwestern Law School and are student members of the Armenian Bar Association.
Today, we're going to be discussing an important and often overlooked issue of inappropriate social conduct on college campuses in regards to Title IX violations.
As young adults stepping into college life, you are not only gaining academic knowledge, but also learning how to navigate complex social dynamics.
Understanding proper social conduct is crucial because Title IX violations can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, or background.
In this video, we are exploring different forms of inappropriate social conduct on college campuses from the perspective of an attorney, security officer, and psychologist. Most importantly, we want to provide you with helpful tools and resources as you embark on your journey to college and beyond. Knowing where to seek help and support is vital. Whether it's campus services, local organizations, or national hotlines, having this information can make a significant difference in your safety and the safety of others.
Mr. Markus is a criminal defense attorney with a focus on both misdemeanor, felony, and Title IX cases. His caseload ranges from DUI cases to complex homicide and death penalty litigation. Before joining private practice, he served as a deputy district attorney for the County of Los Angeles for 33 years. He is an experienced instructor, having taught at various educational institutions, law enforcement agencies, and prosecutorial organizations. He is a member of the California and Nevada Bar. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you. We're going to go ahead and start with a few questions for you. So can you define what Title IX is?
Title IX is a federal legislation that allows college universities or educational institutions to govern particular types of behavior on campus to prevent things like sexual assault and stalking. And it provides for a hearing process if someone's accused of that, to go through a particular process that allows them to have particular rights and to have the victim heard, and that information is then provided to a hearing board that makes a decision as to whether or not the violation occurred.
Can you define or provide us a few different Title IX violations?
So most of the Title IX violations on college campuses involve some form of sexual assault, sexual conduct, and now it's been expanded to the issue of stalking or following somebody around a college campus or off college campus.
Why must we all know about Title IX?
It's important to know about Title IX because individuals who go to educational institutions are required to engage in behavior that's appropriate and according to the guidelines of the institution. If they do not, they can in fact be accused of misbehaving, and they could in fact suffer sanctions as a result of that, from counseling all the way up to being removed from the school so that you can't graduate.
So I'm going to start off with a hypothetical to get us through the next few questions. So our hypothetical is we have Johnny and we have Sally. They are freshmen at college and they've attended a party together. At the party, time goes by and Johnny happens to kiss Sally with no consent from Sally. So with that hypothetical, what happens when Sally reports her incident of Johnny kissing her to their college?
It's a great question. It's a great hypothetical because one would think that that behavior isn't something that is significant enough to be a violation of some school policy. But I can assure you it is. Each school has a definition of what consent is and what consensual behavior is between students in that fashion, that kind of contact. And if in fact Sally did not, according to the definition, consent to the kiss, it is a Title IX violation for Johnny to do what he did. May seem minor, may seem insignificant to some, but it's not to universities.
So can you describe what the hearing process is when Sally reports this to her college?
So basically, the hearing process starts from Sally going in and filing a complaint. That complaint is investigated. And then it moves on to interviews of Johnny as to what happened. And then all that information is given to a hearing board, usually consists of an administrator from the school, a professor, and a student representative, usually 3 people. It can be more, can be less. but they decide whether or not, by the standard of either preponderance of the evidence or clear and convincing evidence, depending on the school, as to whether or not Johnny violated the school policy. In this case, did he misinterpret Sally's consent to the kiss?
Can you define what preponderance of the evidence means, since our audience is a bit younger?
Sure. So it's a lawyer term for, in criminal cases, you need to have a crime proved against you when you go to court in a criminal case, proved against you by the standard beyond a reasonable doubt. In Title IX cases, it's merely clear and convincing, or, depending on the university, preponderance of the evidence. What that means to you is, if the panel believes more likely than not that Johnny kissed Sally without her consent, you're in violation of Title IX. That's what it means. So it's important to be aware of Title IX and its implications.
And what happens if you're found in violation of Title IX? For example, Johnny in this situation, what happens to him? What can he do?
So it's a scary thing, and it's important that students, when they go to school and they enter a university or college, and when they get that videotape that they're supposed to pay attention to as a requirement about Title IX, that they do pay attention to it, that you just don't skim over that, because it can affect your entire life. There are classes given at universities that address Title IX. They're not a whole semester, they may be a week, but it's important that you attend them, because it's important for people to know what rights they have if they are victimized by sexual assault or stalking, and what rights you have to defend yourself against that. Because if you're found in violation of a Title IX accusation, the sanctions can go all the way from counseling at the school to teach you what consent means, for example, in the context of the school, all the way up to expulsion, that you're removed from the school. You also need to understand that if you're expelled from the school and you apply to go to another college, you have to tell that college that you were expelled from the other college for a Title IX violation, and they may not accept you. So it has enormous ramifications just for your 4-year college meaning of your education, but it also has extended ramifications through the rest of your life, because you don't have to be explaining this your entire life. And if something happened to you and you're victimized on campus, you want to be supported and know that the system supports you through the rest of your life.
Can you explain the rights of the victim and the perpetrator during the hearing process? For example, Johnny and Sally, once they get to the hearing process.
Sure, great question. So in my practice now, for example, this week I received calls for assistance from people that were victimized on college campuses, and also those that were accused of those. The victim has a right to make the accusation, has a right to have it investigated properly, fully, completely, and to be represented well at that hearing by either what they call an advisor, a family member, or someone of that nature, so that you have someone there to support you and to feel like they have your back at the hearing if you're making the accusation, in this case, Sally and the kiss. Johnny, on the other hand, has a right to have a full and complete investigation, to defend himself, to call witnesses that would disprove that this was not consensual. And he has a right to testify on his own behalf, and he has a right to ask questions of any witness presented against him. So what's important is that you have legal representation, parental support that allows you to understand the process.
And what if the accused does not want to cooperate? Let's say Johnny does not want to cooperate in this entire process.
So under the rules of most educational institutions, universities, if Johnny doesn't show up, the hearing goes on anyhow. And Johnny can be found in violation of Title IX without him being present, okay? And that can occur. If that occurs, the fact that Johnny was unwilling to defend himself or go or attend the hearing can have implications as to what his punishment will be. What I mean by that is, Johnny not attending the proceeding may be a reflection that he's not taking it seriously. If he's not taking it seriously, the institution, if he's found in violation of Title IX, will want to have a punishment that forces him to understand he should take it seriously. So it's important to understand that if you choose not to cooperate in the investigation with the Title IX investigators, or attend the hearing, or ask questions, or do anything of that nature, it can have a real impact on the outcome and your punishment.
And does law enforcement, such as campus police or just police officers, are they ever brought in during the hearing process?
So that's, again, another great question. And I'll say that for this reason. Title IX is just not limited to what happens on that college campus that day or that moment. Because what can happen after that is that criminal charges can be filed against you for sexual assault, and you can end up in a criminal case with real serious sanctions like jail. In addition to that, you can be sued for your behavior on the college campus as a result of your inappropriate conduct. And even more importantly, if you're found in violation of a Title IX, that can kind of follow you through the rest of your life, through job interviews, through discussions. So it's real important that you get involved early on in the process. You be open constantly to understand and discuss with your parents, your family, with lawyers, with anybody you can talk to understand the Title IX process and go through it completely so you know what your rights and how to defend yourself are. The implications can be enormous.
And then regarding the hearing process, is there a record that's kept during that hearing process?
So at most Title IX proceedings, the process is not, it is recorded so that the statements that are made or the testimony that's given is recorded. Also, when the investigator conducts a report and interviews somebody and creates a report, that report is also a good record of what occurred as a result of the Title IX violation. Both of those are part of the hearing.
Is the record and report that you were referring to, is that kept confidential? Must you report it when you apply for employment, let's say graduate school?
So a lot of college applications, if you want to go to graduate school, a lot of college applications require you to disclose if you've been accused of or found in violation of a Title IX issue. Now, the accused part of that is real important because you need to defend yourself appropriately at the hearing. So if you are applying for a job later and someone says, "Why were you accused?" you can say, "I was accused for this, but I didn't do it. And here's the reasons why. Here's the investigation." It can have implications to jobs. It can be asked on job applications. But more importantly, on certain types of applications, there's a requirement to disclose that anyhow. Like, for example, if you want to become a Supreme Court justice, at a hearing, there are going to be questions potentially asked of you about that conduct in college that can, in fact, implicate or cause you problems in trying to become a Supreme Court justice.
And lastly, what advice would you give to students, who are graduating high school right now and are freshmen in college to be aware of Title IX and its violations?
The first advice I would give to you is, number one, when you go to college, pay attention and just don't skim past the education you get about Title IX and conduct that's appropriate on a college campus. If there's a video given to you or if there's a class to be taken, take that class. My son played football at a major university, and his first week on the college campus had nothing to do with football. He was in a classroom with all the other rest of the football players, and the coaches and the school were educating him on Title IX violations, what to do, what not to do, how to defend yourself. It's critical and important to pay attention to. Secondly, be open to conversations with people on campus, your parents, friends. Discuss Title IX. Discuss what behavior should happen and shouldn't happen. Discuss the fact that if somebody is improperly accused, what they can do to help themselves. Be open to the conversation and also be open to what kind of conduct is acceptable and what's not. And if the community supports itself that way on a college campus, it's going to prevent a lot more of these Title IX issues. So that's the advice I give. Pay attention. Talk to your parents. Don't be embarrassed if something like this happens to you. Be open about it. educate yourself, and make sure that you continue the dialogue.
Thank you so much for being here with us today and for the advice for our students and anyone who's watching this video. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's been a real pleasure. Pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
And good luck on the bar exam.
Thank you.
Hi, and thank you for joining us. Today with me, I have Officer Evan Bruzzi joining us all the way from Orange County. Previously, Officer Bruzzi was a field training officer working to train officers on campus safety practices at St. Michael's College for 3 years, and he is currently a police officer in Orange County. So thank you for joining us and being here with us today. So we have a few questions. The first being, can you please describe the specific roles and responsibilities of campus security in responding to cases of sexual violence involving students?
So campus security is the first basically line of defense that gets statements, interviews, and sees most of the things that happen and talks to the victims of sexual violence and Title IX violence.
And in these situations, when does local law enforcement get involved?
The local law enforcement will get involved once the campus security officer determines that a law has been broken or something is very suspicious when it comes to talking to the victim.
And could you walk us through the process that follows when a student reports an incident of sexual violence?
So the reporting can be at any point. It can be at parties, it can be at their dorms, or even at the public safety office. Usually an interview will have to be made with the public safety officer, which is important so that they get all the facts. Once a crime has been determined to have happened, they'll then contact local law enforcement and help them with the initial statement that they've gotten.
Right. And how does campus security ensure the victim's safety and privacy during this, of course, very difficult time?
So everything is confidential when it comes to public safety and public records. Some things that can happen is a student can request to be moved to a different dorm room, maybe off-campus housing, and then maybe some counseling with the school counselor can all be things that can help them.
And is the investigation process different when the person reporting an incident is a bystander, friend, fellow student, or resident advisor?
It makes it different, but it also helps because there's an additional witness to something that may have happened. And it's important for people to see something and say something. That way we can contact the victim or someone who also saw what happened and confirm kind of if something happened bad or if it was maybe just a mistake of what they had seen.
And an important question for our viewers who may be bystanders in these situations, is the reporting of these incidents confidential?
Yes, absolutely. Everything is confidential when it comes to reporting things and what they saw.
Great. And what protections, in addition, does the university provide to the party reporting the incident?
So the university can provide also movement of housing and help them out, but mostly their focus is going to be on the victim and what happened and how they can assist them.
And at what point in time are incidents reported to administration?
So immediately administration is notified once an incident has happened. When local law enforcement is brought in, everyone in administration will be told.
And what role does impairment play in these specific incidents?
Impairment can play a lot of roles. In college, impairment is obviously going to be a factor when it comes to weekend parties and other things that happen. So I would say that it is something to be concerned about, but I would also know that college-age students are going to party and they're going to do a bunch of things because they're out alone. So I think it does play a role, but it should not be just the limiting factor for everything.
Right. And I think that's just important to mention for students to be aware that it's okay to go and have fun, but to also remember to be safe and take the necessary steps to do so.
Yes.
And so based on your experience, what are the most effective actions that students can take to protect themselves from becoming victims of assault or sexual violence on campus?
Being able to watch your back is very important. Saying something when it's not popular, wanting to leave a party because you feel uncomfortable, even if your friends are having fun. I think saying something is very important and underrated, especially in the college community. And then also watching your friends. making sure that they get home safe and everyone has another weekend to go out or another day. Having Find My iPhone is very important, along with having a group meeting spot maybe at a specific time when you want to leave the party.
So thank you to Officer Bruzzi for all his insight and answering these questions. We hope that our viewers learned something today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mouradian, for joining us today. Can we get a little bit of a background on yourself?
Yes, thank you. It's so great to be here. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been in practice for over 15 years. I work with children, parents, and families, and so great to be here.
Glad to have you. So the first question I want to ask is, what are some common emotional or behavioral responses young adults might exhibit following an incident of harassment or assault?
Okay. So one of the first things that people can experience is shock and disbelief, where they initially feel shocked and they find it hard to believe that an incident has happened. Another thing that's very common is fear and anxiety, so anxious about the incident, so they may feel vulnerable and very insecure. Another thing that's common is anger and frustration after something's happened. So that anger and frustration can lead to an internalization of feelings, so being mindful of that. Another thing is guilt and self-blame, so feeling guilty, taking the blame, and not kind of taking that responsibility for themselves to talk to someone. Shame and embarrassment is a big one. Also, shame of sharing these feelings of what has happened, especially if they've been harassed or assaulted. Depression and anxiety is very common. Sadness, withdrawal, isolation. And physical symptoms are also another important fact to keep in mind, and they can manifest as stomach aches, headaches, also social withdrawal or sleeping a lot or sleeping too much. Headaches, and the last thing that is really important is difficulty trusting other people after an incident has happened.
Thank you for all that. It's good to be aware.
Yeah.
The second one is, what role does consent play in preventing on-campus harassment, and how could students be better educated? So when is a no, and when is a yes a yes?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So one of the things that are really important is understanding what is consent. So consent, and for students to understand what that means. So consent is voluntary, it's informed, it's an agreement, right, that we make between each other. It's really important, especially if it's sexual or romantic. Consent also means that there's a clear communication between the two of us, that there's a mutual understanding, and that there's no manipulation. Because if somebody feels manipulated in a situation, then they may interpret a yes as a no as a yes. So it's really important that we distinguish that. The other important fact is important consent education. So raising awareness, promoting healthy relationships, being comfortable saying, you know, this is what I'm comfortable, this is what I'm not comfortable doing. Understanding boundaries. I think boundaries is really important, is when someone asks you to do something or doesn't feel comfortable, even if you are in a relationship or within a friendship, is you really actually respecting that and listening to what the other person has to say. I think a lot of times boundaries are breached because it could be from people pleasing, or it could be us not wanting to listen or understand what the other person is saying. So that's really important. Ongoing communication is really crucial, because consent is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process, right? Taking in consideration everything we've talked about. And those are like the most important topics when we talk about consent.
Yeah. So for the third one, we're going to see what factors do you think might contribute to someone becoming an aggressor in cases of on-campus harassment or inappropriate conduct.
Yes, that's a really charged one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first piece I really want to look at is culture, right? So what is cultural attitudes, societal norms that condone certain behaviors, right? I think it's important that as we start college and students are looking at their own culture, where they're coming from and what's acceptable or not acceptable. I think a lot of times if you ever have a question and you're not sure, is to ask and to process. I don't think we do enough of that. I think we tend to internalize a lot of these feelings and emotions, and that's how we get into these situations that tend to happen that may not be favorable. So looking at messages that reinforce gender stereotypes, dominance, things maybe that you don't feel comfortable in your own culture, is to maybe also express it with someone else and have that conversation. So I really emphasize ongoing communication. If you're not sure about something, ask. It never hurts to ask. The other thing with this question is power dynamics, right? So power imbalances in certain relationships. And that could be an academic setting, that could even be with a teacher, that could be with friends around you, that could be with someone who's at a higher grade level than you are. So really understanding and stepping back, what about that power dynamic makes you feel uncomfortable? Don't ignore that feeling, because that's how people kind of exert power over you, they exert control over you, and that can really create sometimes inappropriate behaviors. It could create discomfort and issues. The other thing is lack of awareness and education. I think that some individuals can engage in harassing or inappropriate behavior because they just are not aware, right? Maybe they're not aware of your culture. Maybe they're not aware of your boundaries. So having that explicit conversation and saying, you know, I don't feel comfortable with this. This is not part of my belief system or whatever it is, and not feeling embarrassed to say that. Personal characteristics could also be part of it. Some people just lack empathy sometimes. They lack the ability to step into your shoes and understand where you're coming from. So when you can practice that for yourself, other people get to see that. The other thing could be what have they been through, maybe exposure or violence or trauma. Substance abuse, you know, we talked about this too, is really important, is when you're going to a party and you're intoxicated, really being cautious and mindful. You know, I know you want to have fun, but being mindful of, you know, about the people around you and what decisions you're going to make when you are going to that event.
What preventative measures can be taken to educate potential young adult aggressors about the impact of their actions?
Okay, I love that. So I think this is an ongoing, how do I say, life thing that you can take in your life, whether it's for college and as you move forward in your workplace as well. So implementing, I think what I'm really big on is education programs, right? I think we have to continue this conversation. It's great that we're doing this project, that people are listening, students are listening, but educational programs on consent, on boundaries, on respect, and really learning these healthy relationships, you know, that we're teaching, that you're learning from your peers and from people around you. Being mindful to, again, we go back to communication skills, empathy. The other piece that is really big we didn't talk about is bystander intervention, right? You see something happening, don't stay quiet, say something, right? I think you may be the one at the party that didn't drink or didn't do anything, and then you're looking at someone and you see something's happening. Maybe you're scared to say something. I think today in the age of social media, we tend to be quiet and just watch and just pull out the phone and film. No, say something. Be present. You can change a life by doing that. I think that's really important. And don't be afraid of intervening or saying something, because you could really change someone's life, right? And also your role modeling, I think, too, for other people. I think this is a big part that is missing, which is, how do I recognize the signs? How do I safely intervene in the situations? How do I speak up and really take action? So remember that these are all things that can support you.
The last question I have for you is, what support or intervention programs are available for young adults exhibiting inappropriate behavior?
Okay. So this is a really important one, because a lot of the times, when something happens, we don't feel safe, right? And when we don't feel safe, then or when you've been traumatized, your first, you know, it's almost like a blockage that you get. So you don't feel safe even thinking, what do I do next? How do I approach this? Now I feel ashamed. I can't tell my parent. I can't tell my friend. So there are a lot of resources that are available. So let's look first at the resources that are available on campus. So on campus, you always have a counseling department. Go and seek that. They're amazing people. They're there to support you and to listen. This is their job. Everything is confidential. So they're there to really help you to process and to figure out what's the right step to take. If you're dealing with anger management, I want to talk about that a little bit. Or if you have a friend or someone who's dealing with that, anger management is also a big part when you're dealing with aggression or anger-related issues. So there are programs like that out there too. On campus, I think it's more of the general therapeutic counseling services, where they can also guide you to more specific programs off campus if you need it. My biggest concern with on campus is substance abuse, right? So it's the substance abuse. So if you're not the one using, but you see your friend is using, or you see your friend is in trouble or anything like that, there are also specific programs that can help with substance abuse, right? And getting help is so important. The other thing that's really out there too is mentorship programs, and so that you can get that guidance and support. But I think they all start, honestly, at the campus level, right? So don't be afraid to go ask those questions, to go seek out that support. Another program I really like a lot is psychologytoday.com, where you can just Google and kind of find more in private if you don't want to go on campus, because on campus is free. But the psychologytoday.com is just another resource as well, and there's so many other ones right now online. There's also legal interventions that I think are important, where you can seek, and I think this, again, goes back to the campus level of seeking support if you feel that that's a need.
No, it's great. I feel like a lot of these programs a lot of students aren't aware of once they really go into college for the first time, so it's great insight. Thank you so much for your time. I think this is great and really insightful for all future youth going into college.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
This is Alin Abrahamian back again. I want to thank our three amazing experts, as well as my fellow colleagues Maya and Alec, and the Armenian Bar Association's Domestic Violence Committee for shining a light on this serious issue. We have all heard of the types of incidents which our experts discussed, making it all the more crucial to talk about this topic. Awareness and discussion are the first step to protecting yourself and those around you. By raising awareness and educating ourselves, we can contribute to a safer college experience. While prevention is key, the most important step is for you to seek help if you find yourself on either end of these interactions. Whether you are a victim, a bystander, or the person being accused, remember, help is always available. Don't be afraid to reach out to a trusted adult.